This video is entitled Selecting a Methodology and goes along with Chapter 4 of our Project Management for Technology course. I'm Dr. Reneau from Shawnee State University, and I'll be taking you through this brief video lecture. In this video, we're going to talk about the SDLC, the Systems Development Lifecycle. We're going to talk about the two broad categories of methodologies, the classical waterfall methodology and the agile methodologies. And there's another video on different agile methodologies and what makes them different. And the third section of this video is going to be about which is best for which situations, because there's not always one size fits all when it comes to selecting a methodology for managing a project. So the systems development life cycle is what really the classic methodology for managing a tech project. The systems development lifecycle follows 4 or 5 steps. In some textbooks, they only include the first 4: planning, analysis, design, and implementation, where in other textbooks they include the 5th. Other textbooks show it in a circle, but in the classical sense of the waterfall, you move from planning to analysis, analysis to design, design to implementation, and then you're done with the project and you pass it on to operations to do the maintenance. So there are several variations of the systems development life cycle, but you can see that planning is that initial, should we do the project? Analysis then is collecting all the documents about the project, understanding the needs, understanding the scope, creating your scope documents. The design is where you're starting to create your deliverable documents. What are you going to deliver? Your work breakdown structure, your Gantt charts, your PERT charts, your design of how to actually make it happen. And then implementation is where you actually do the project. You actually build the tech project or the project in general. So the systems development life cycle here, I show it in a circle, but most books show it kind of as a waterfall of moving from planning to analysis to design to implementation, and leave the maintenance off. The waterfall methodology. It's the classical methodology, and the thing about the waterfall methodology is it's very predictive and very prescriptive. It's step by step, and the steps are known in advance, and we plan as much as possible. For instance, think about building a building, for instance. When you're building a building, you start with a design. You sit down with your architect and talk about what you would like to have. You talk about how many square feet, and you figure out what you're going to do. And then the architect goes and builds these plans with work breakdown structures, with uh, subcontractors, and bringing in specialists to do bits and pieces like plumbers to do this, electricians to do that. And you do that in a very step by step, very methodical way. You do the groundwork. You dig the ditches. You lay the foundation. You pour some of the concrete, and you've got to do it in a specific order. You can't throw the roof up without the walls being up first, or without some of the structure being up first. You can't put the plumbing in. Well, you can put some of the plumbing in if you're going to put the plumbing in grade, but you can't do the sinks until you get the interior done. So there's a very distinct order that things need to happen in. And you can think of building a building, and sometimes building a tech project, in the classic waterfall methodology. Usually with the methodology waterfall, we complete a phase before we move on to the next phase. We get this done, test it, verify it, move on to this. So you're done with the foundation before you build the floor, before you build the walls, before. Um, Again, everything is defined well in advance. Changes are difficult to do in a waterfall methodology, and changes have to be monitored very closely, and you only do a change when it's really important or really necessary, because you've got this thing planned out months and sometimes years in advance. You can't really change it willy nilly, So changes cost money to redo the plans and to make sure they don't implement and make sure they don't mess with other parts of the waterfall methodology. Waterfall methodologies are great when you're doing bidding or fixed price, or you're going to have subcontractors do part and not other parts, because you can give the subcontractor the methodology, you can give them the list of work breakdowns, you can give them all of that, and they can do that, complete that phase, and then we can get rid of that contractor and move on to the next phase. Kind of like, again, building a building where we bring in the plumbers to do the plumbing, we bring in the electricians to do the electrical work, we bring in the drywallers to hang the drywall, we bring in the concrete guys or gals to put in the concrete. So you can see that's very much of a waterfall methodology of boom, 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 boom in a very prescriptive and predictive order of things. Agile methodologies are much more kind of flying by the seat of our pants, just kind of figuring out as we go. There are several different agile methodologies, from Scrum to Lean to XP to feature driven to Agile Unified to a whole bunch of others. And every agile methodology and every group kind of tweaks the agile methodologies to be their own. So we're going to also talk about the hybrid agile methodology. Each of these methodologies have their various strengths and weaknesses, but we'll talk about that in our next video. Think about your family and your last road trip, maybe. Um, do you use the waterfall methodology of you plan in advance that we're going to leave at this time and we're going to stop here and we're going to eat here and we're going to buy gas here and we're going to stop here and we're going to make it here by this time, where we have reservations? You can see that's a very strict kind of laid out. Or are you a family that just gets in the car and says, we're going to go to the beach? I don't know. And you drive for a bit and go, hey, that looks interesting, let's stop. And you go, okay. Or the team or the family says, no, let's keep going. And you drive a little further and go, hey, I need to eat. And everybody says, okay, and where do you want to eat? Well, we don't know, let's go here. I mean, why not? So that's more of an agile kind of methodology where your requirements evolve. Think about a building. You can't build it agilely because you have to know what your roof is going to look like and what your walls are going to need to be to support the roof, the foundation to support the walls to support the roof. So you really can't build a building kind of willy-nilly, kind of just going. But with a software package, maybe you don't exactly know where it is you're going. Maybe you don't exactly know what all the features are yet. Maybe you know some of the important ones. Maybe you've got a general idea of kind of where we're going, but you don't really have a formal plan yet. So an agile methodology is where we use incremental portions that can easily be assigned, accomplished, tested, and deployed. So we do a little bit and push it out to the end users. Maybe we create part of the user interface and say, okay, the website started. Then we create something else and push it out and say, okay, here's this new feature, and we do something else and push it out. So the user, instead of having to wait until the whole thing is finished, can start using it, start giving feedback. So our stakeholders, our users, all have to be very involved and active with regular reviews, with input, with use, with testing, and all, to feed back into the agile methodology, to feed back in to the next thing you're working on or the next things you're working on. And often you'll find that your priorities will change. The priorities you had at the beginning of, well, these are the five most important things we've got to do right now, you'll get three of them done, and then they'll go, you know what? Those last two aren't near as important as this stuff, because that's again the power of the agile methodology. Agile drives some people crazy because they want to really have that strong command and control, predictive and prescriptive waterfall classical methodology. But for a lot of software development, especially with motivated small teams, Agile really works great. This second slide on Agile kind of repeats some of the things I've already been saying, but Some practitioners and some consultants and some software people and tech people will say that Agile is exactly what you want for everything. I don't buy it. There are times when Agile is great, there are times when it's not. You can't build a car, a home, an airplane, a building. You can't build a production line agilely. You really are going to have to sit down with the engineers and figure out what you're doing and build it more in a classical way. Um, Agile does work very well for some software and some other tech products projects. When we're doing Agile, I want to bring up the 80/20 rule, even though it's not mentioned in the book. It is mentioned in several books on various Agile methodologies. And the 80/20 rule basically says the user uses about 20% of the code 80% of the time. So 20% of the features in a program are what you use most often. Think about when you use Microsoft Word. How many times have you used mail merge? How many times have you used some of the crazy features? How many times have you used the automatic endnotes, footnotes, citation system? How many times have you used all the crazy word art and all that stuff? How many documents do you really use that stuff on? A vast majority of documents you probably never use and probably never will use some of those features. But 80% of the time, you use font, spell check, grammar check, the basic editing feature, printing, saving to a PDF, and that's about it, right? I mean, for your homework assignments, that's what you do. So, when you're doing an agile development, you're not building the 100% product. You start by building the 20% product that the users will use and really get started using and get comfortable using. And then, as you find out what the user needs to add, you can make priorities of what to add to make that system complete. The trick with agile again is to all get the something in the hands of the stakeholders, get something in the hands of the people that actually use it, and they can make it better incrementally after that. Now, remember that the very first slide first video we said that the definition of a project is a temporary endeavor with a definite start and end to produce a specific something. Well, when we're doing agile methodology, when we're using an agile methodology, that definition kind of gets kind of fuzzy because we might have a definite start and end. You've got a year to get this, but you don't have a definite deliverable. You don't know exactly what you're doing. Um, and if the system is sufficiently huge enough, the agile development team may dwindle down to two or three that are always tweaking it and working on it and adding enhancements, and the project may never end, which is when we fall into something called a DevOps kind of modality, and we'll talk about that in the agile video. So I've hinted at when to use waterfall, and I've hinted as to when to use the agile methodologies. But here we go. Let's just look at the a bulleted list here of reasons. Tolerance to change. Can your client or can you accept the risk of the flexibility? Or do you really need it to be defined in advance? Um, how tolerant is your client? How tolerant is your business, your development group to working with change? If you can handle the change, Agile might be better for you. Um, do you know all of the requirements? If you don't know all the requirements, Waterfall will fail miserably. So if you know all the requirements up front, then Waterfall might be better for you. Budgeting, scheduling. If you've got a fixed cost, then Waterfall might be a better idea because you can design it in details, figure out what the cost of all the pieces are, add all of it up, and come up with a good estimate. Or is it one of these things where you need something now? I need a system today. It doesn't have to be done, it just has to be something to get me started. Well, that would be an agile. Remember the old triple constraint, and we'll talk about the triple constraint in a whole bunch of videos throughout this semester. And you really need to keep the triple constraint in your mind for just about everything you do. There's time, money, and quality. If you want it fast and you want it well done, it's going to cost money and significant money. If you want it cheap, it won't be fast and it won't be good. Um, and so you've got to always keep a balance of time, money, and quality when you're thinking about a project. Environmental. And I don't mean environmental the base, the green, the planet, and all that stuff. Well, it could be, but I kind of mean how is your employee, your work environment, your cohort, your project team, do they like to work close together? Because if it's a closely working team, then an agile methodology might work better because of the flexibility. Or if it's more of a distributed team where you've got a group over here doing this and you've got a group over here doing that and you've got a group up here doing this, well, a waterfall methodology might be better because you could assign them tasks. um, your culture, do you have a culture that is very traditional and very hierarchical, or do you have a culture that is kind of a culture of continuous improvement, of taking risk, of gaining those rewards of taking risks? Is it a individualized kind of culture or a group kind of culture? And different corporate cultures also matter. Also, your management culture makes a big difference. For instance, in the military, getting an agile methodology might not work because of the whole command and control structure. uh, Developmental and industry standards. What are the team experience? What's the standard operational practices? What are the regulations? What kind of reporting and all kinds of stuff. Um, with developmental and industry standards may kind of push you into one methodology or the other. And, to do a combination of the two, to maybe do little waterfalls inside of an agile methodology inside of agile, or do little agile sub projects within a bigger waterfall. It's not an absolute one or the other. It's an and, it's an or, it's a but, it's a both. It's yeah, that's the trick with being a project manager. The book, CompTIA Project Plus Study Guide Exam PK 0005 3rd edition by Kim Heldman, was used in the creation of this video presentation. I'd like to say thank you for suffering through yet another one of these videos. This presentation is copyright 2023 by James Reneau Ph.D. All rights are reserved. This video is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License, and you can always contact me at jreneau@shawnee.edu if you have any questions. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video presentation.